know. Oh, and I called it. Poison. Bit a poison capsule in her mouth, killed her with a kiss. Oh, I called that.
Did you think that was fitting though? Did that ending work for you?
100%. No, the reason I called it was because that's the perfect ending.
Mm.
It is, isn't it? It's the whole dig two graves thing.
Well, and it's perfect too because it kind of redeems Ainu in a way, because the whole point of that is that she's still not as bad as Lady Chun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It, it is weirdly redemptive because it really does show that Chun's just that level below what Ainu is. Ainu did something. I mean, like, because Ainu's vengeance is brutal. Like she didn't fuck around, all right, at all. Like she murders the hell out of everyone that's wronged her. But in so doing, she exposes this forced prostitution ring and saves a whole lot of women. She avenges the death of a guy that gave his life for her. I mean, like, and even like when she is meeting the architect of all of her sorrows after she's done the killing blow, laying there dying, she's not gloating. He gives her a little parting, her farewell kiss because like there was some kind of genuine element to her love, and it really does finally show that yeah, Ainu is actually better, even though she's grisly and ultimately doomed. It's perfect ending,
yeah,
perfect ending.
I would agree. And and so yeah, so I don't know. And what were your thoughts on things like the fight choreography and well, we'll start there. The fight choreography and like the fight sequences and things like that.
Fight choreography had a real impact. I mean, there's no fight in this movie that isn't like a little bit gut wrenching. Like they kind of go for the low blows, they go for the gore, and it's not like really like over the top gory.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like you'd see like in Kurosawa where like something gets hit and then just arterial spray. Um, but like the scene where the mute hero dude is dying, it's a long scene and there's a lot of really good fighting in it. Like the choreography is really on point. It's really believable, and it's beautiful. So there's like a clear skill and really good cinematography, and the sets they're going over are gorgeously realized. And having all those elements, like those contrasting elements of that like brutality, because he's like slowly losing this fight, and he gets just again like ripped to shreds and like mutilated until he dies. So it's hard to watch, but it's also beautiful to watch. That's pretty unique. I haven't really seen a lot of movies that do something like that. So high marks, really high marks, really. I see why you are into this movie. I also like I was reading. I picked up my copy of Ogre's Gate after this movie almost immediately, and I was like flipping through there because you've been getting some products out lately, and you've been letting me see them early, and it always gets me in the mood to run that game because I've been very low on gaming time recently, but it's like that's top of my list for the next thing I want to run all the time. So I was really getting to see in the art and in like some of the descriptions of the attacks. I was like, man, Intimate Confessions had a huge influence on Ogre's Gate.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. It definitely did. It definitely did. Chor Yuen in general and Intimate Confessions. Like there's a character that's clearly modeled after Lady Chun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
which I mean, what a great character.
mm,
Really, the character work in this movie is real good.
yeah, I agree. I agree. And also, I mean, it's a significant movie too because it deals with lesbian characters, and that's 19 the early 70s,
Yeah,
1972.
it is front and center. Like they don't make any bones
Yeah.
about it. They are not coy. It's like, nope, she is in gay love. They are gay lovers.
In
They are
fact,
having gay sex. They're doing the big gay.
I'm curious when the Vampire Lovers came out because that is the other movie that it kind of reminds me of whenever I watch it. So that was 1970. So
Oh,
I really have to wonder how much of an impact that had on this film because the Vampire Lovers, I mean, it's a different kind of movie. It's a vampire movie, but it's like I think it was like the first like there was like a spate of lesbian vampire movies, and I'm pretty sure the Vampire Lovers was either the first one or like the first important one. Do you know what I mean? The
yeah,
first
kind
big
of like
one.
how Dracula wasn't the first vampire movie. Nosferatu was,
Yeah.
but Dracula was the big vampire movie.
And Nosferatu is still basically Dracula, but
It's
but uh,
serial numbers filed off Dracula.
but yeah. So I have to imagine that that had an influence on this movie, and you know, and so but still, I mean, 1972 for movies from this area and in this time and in this genre. It's notable for that reason.
Yeah,
Um,
um, it's a big deal. Like it's very central to the plot. It basically informs the motivation of the main hero and the main villain. Um, this is a whole thing.
no,
Whole movie's that.
what did you
Uh,
think? Oh, go ahead. I interrupted you. I don't want to.
well, I
Yeah.
was thinking there was a trans character in one of the early movies that we watched, and that was another one where I was like really like
That was
staggered.
probably Swordsman 2 is
Yeah, I
probably
think it
what
was
you're thinking.
Swordsman too,
And
where
that was the
the
90s. There was kind of a lot of that kind of stuff in a lot of the Hong Kong movies in the 90s. Um, but this just seems even more surprising to me because it's so early. But
so
like,
early.
yeah, but like, what did you? Well, first of all, I should mention it looks like we had a little bit of a hiccup in the recorder, so we might have lost some of the early portion of the recording. If we did, I just want to reiterate here that we're talking about Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan, a Chor Yuen movie from 1972, and hopefully most of the discussion's been caught on the
It
recorder.
would be tragic
But
to have lost this.
well,
This is
I was
good.
fiddling with my mic, and I think that might have caused a hiccup because
We
my
cannot
mic
mess with
switched
our
off.
mics enough tonight. Like
Yeah,
I was messing with mine earlier and almost destroyed it.
yeah.
Uh,
So,
oops.
but we're just gonna march on because it's been like
Uh,
the people listening have no idea the the stuff that has led up to where we are right now. Like it has just
yeah,
been.
well, these last few months have
Yeah,
been such a drain
yeah,
on Brendan and on me for totally different reasons. So here's the thing: we actually recorded the intro to this beforehand. So I say, worst comes to worst, we just smash these two together.
I don't think
We
no, because I wasn't even coherent during the. I don't even remember.
doesn't matter.
Like when we were recording it, I had no idea what you were saying. So it was.
All I basically just said what I said just then. My opinion has not changed on the movie. I think I did it more eloquently this time. If you lost it, I'm going to choke you.
No,
And
I'm sure I still have it somewhere, but because I mean it's on the the way the software works is it tends to preserve those things. But anyways, just in case the front end of this got cut off, I just want to make sure people weren't terribly confused what we're talking about.
hopefully like record the video of this. I look ghoulish in this right now
Yeah, you
since I'm
do.
like
No, you do.
so.
So anyways, where I wanted to go though is to touch on the revenge plot and what you thought of her, just how she planned her revenge and the things she did. If you
It,
know,
weird- it was weird seeing the very first seed of Kill Bill getting planted. Because it's like it's staged exactly the same way as in Kill Bill. They show the money shots of the bad guys doing the bad stuff. I won't go into the details. Like what happened. We all
Mhm.
know. And then like one by one, the movie's about her picking them off.
Yeah, no, that's true. It does kind of have that sort of vibe, and
It's it's almost like it's almost too structured.
well,
Like there's not really a ton of surprises until they get to the torture chamber. There's not a ton of surprises. That one I liked quite a bit.
I mean, one of the things they do that is it's the thing that makes it sort of a little bit of an exploitation film, but it's also important to making the movie work. Is that the reason for her revenge is you sort of have to endure what she endures at the beginning
Oh,
of the movie.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's really
Yes.
horrifying. It's not easy to watch, but it makes the revenge plot that much more satisfying when
It
you get
does.
there.
The movie knows that it drug you through the mud too, because it lingers on like some of the comedic elements or some of the really satisfying like stomp the worm under your boot heel kind of revenge moments. Like it was that guy she sets on fire in his house right in front of the constable. Like that was such a satisfying kill, and it wasn't even like a kung fu kill. It was really just like it was really like a spectacle for the audience. Like, look at this fat pig die, burn, you fat bastard.
Yeah, a
Uh,
lot of her kills are really just kind of clever. They don't even necessarily involve like one. She has that other guy essentially make love to death, right? She
oh
keeps
yeah,
getting him
that
to
was
take aphrodisiacs and all that. It's all really sort of cleverly staged kills that'll keep her from getting in trouble, essentially. Um, and but I think, you know, as rough as the movie is to watch, I do think those scenes all benefit from
Yeah,
how
they have,
unflinching the earlier portion of the film is.
and the thing is, they know when to pull the camera away. Like this isn't like Irreversible where it just lingers on the stomach churning the shot.
Yeah.
No, they don't do that. They're like, nope, you get the idea,
Yeah.
audience. We're gonna move on. We're
Yeah.
just moving along, right along. And like the great thing about it is that again it does that, which is a courtesy to us as viewers. But it also like treats the subject with a lot of gravity because it does a kind of a clever in media res thing where it implies what happens and then it skips ahead in time to her being in her cell and like kind of just being there like really stone faced and clearly dealing with some emotional turmoil, and then we get the flashbacks that give us little like vignettes of like, well, what happened, and then she like breaks down and starts weeping, and it's really heartbreaking to watch that because like you get that she's just been like just emotionally destroyed by this, and it's treated with the proper gravity, so we as the audience really sympathize with her, and we really hate these assholes. We want to see them get gutted, and we do. It delivers. And like as dark as subject matter was, I thought that was really well done. Like again, I'm the kind of guy that's watched shit like Irreversible, so I've seen as bad as it can get. You know, I've seen that kind of chaos reigns Serbian film make your mind implode from the horror of its stuff. So I appreciate when a film has a little more courtesy for me as a viewer than that, and doesn't want to like put my brain through a meat grinder. That's nice of it. Thank you.
And so I guess you would also mention you wanted to talk about gaming content this time around.
Yeah, we gotta gamify this.
So
Because we skimmed on that a little bit, and I was like, that's one of the two pillars though. We only have the two.
so did this give you any ideas for games? Did you discern gameable content in the movie?
Yeah, they use a lot of like potions and elixirs and poisons. I noted in this one, and like I'm always fascinated by those. Not necessarily like a potion, because I think that like a lot of the conversations.
It's like herbal remedy type stuff, right? It's like in medicine.
Like, make as I'll boil it down to D&D-isms. If a fighter could make it, that's what I'm interested in. Like,
okay.
I get that a wizard can brew a magic potion, and a lot of like the discussion of like doing stuff like this in role-playing games is dominated by like we still sort of live in the shadow of the 3.5 crafting system, where like there's this complex and not necessarily fun or intuitive system that's internally consistent and balanced, for lack of a better term, but it's very wrong-headed in terms of actual gameplay or something that you want to do in a game. And I think that a lot of RPG design sort of still sits in the shadow of that. I don't want that so much in a crafting system or in a system that lets you make like a poison capsule you can put behind your tooth and then kiss somebody with when you're dying to kill them. Like I don't feel like you need magic to make that happen, or like a certain number of levels of a class, and then you have to roll, and you have to get you have to know a certain poison spell. Nah, come on, don't do that. Let me gather the herbs together and read the manual of poisoning, so I can do that.
Okay.
I want something that's just a little more intuitive for it. And it's the same thing with the aphrodisiac stuff. Like, that particular scene reminded me a lot of the House of Paper Shadows thing, where it's got the blood honey.
Oh yeah. Well, the blood. You know where the blood honey comes from? Actually, is a movie called Blood Parrot, and I don't
parakeet parrot kind of thing.
Parrot. Yeah. In fact, let me just pull that movie up now because
who's in charge of naming these movies, man?
It was well, it's a good. Here's what I'll say: the combination, and it might be Bloody Parrot, might not be Blood Parrot. I might have the name wrong, but the title convinced me to watch the movie, so they were doing something right.
I mean, like, I almost can't not watch it now. Because I gotta know, like, where's the parrot coming? But like, I've seen enough of these movies at this point that I'm like, there's not gonna be a parrot. Fuck you, title.
No, there is a parrot in a way in the movie. But the point that I was making was there's an aphrodisiac in that film that gets used. But but it has a lot more of a, like in this film, in Intimate Confessions, the aphrodisiacs are like legitimate aphrodisiacs. He's basically taking like medieval Viagra, right? In that scene. This one turns your skin blue, you look like a monster, and the reveal after the horrific transformation is that it was just an aphrodisiac that put this person into a sexual frenzy, but it looked like they were just going crazy and attacking everything. So it's a really weird, horrific scene, and that's where the blood honey came in. So the blood honey was, I kind of stripped out the sexual element and just turned it into like a violent sort of a thing, but kept kept kind of the visual of it. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, the picture that goes along with it rules.
Yeah, it's a real. That picture was inspired by Bloody Parrot. That was, but either way, it sounds like you're thinking in terms of medicines and various.
They play, I mean, like, there's even a part where they're putting, like, what was it, alum or something in bathwater. Like, I don't know, there's something about it. Like, there's a lot of it in this movie, where they're, like, poisoning people or giving them drugs or something, and I don't know. Another thing that was interesting is that they're running a business at the core of this as a sort of a money laundering scheme or something. Like, basically they were bandits, and then they're like, let's go kind of legitimate so that we don't get hunted down by the cops. That's interesting. That's something, like, you don't... It's one of those things that, like, it serves in a lot of games as, like, oh, that's part of the story of the adventure, and that's the backstory, or that's my backstory as a character. But rarely can you construct those things within a game. They're actually kind of complicated, because you sort of have to have, like, the assumption of how a society works and, like, where you can wedge yourself into it with certain actions before you can make that like a tangible thing in games.
So, and you're saying, like, in most settings you don't have that enough knowledge of the society to...
I think when most people run games, I found, like, they really, like, it really is almost like a video game where, like, the idea is that you're going to go and fight the bad in the place. Like, okay. They don't do the sandbox style like you and I do, really. And I think it makes us kind of sound like weird aliens if you came from, like, you just learned 5th Ed like a year ago and you're crazy in a Critical Role and you stumble randomly on our podcast and you're like, what are they talking about with the hexes? And, like, I really think that there's a gulf between how people play RPGs in the popular sense and, like, the way that you and I would run something like this.
That's always been the case, though. Like, you know, I mean, number one, I've been gaming since, I think, 1986, and so I wasn't in the very beginning, obviously, but I was in
1986.
Huh?
Just to give you a reference of how long you've been gaming, that's my entire life.
Well, I was born in, like, 76, so it's not, you know. You
were 10 years old. You were a little boy, but yep. Still, I was a newborn, and you were, like, D&D.
But I experienced a lot of different sort of versions of mainstream RPG play, and number one, that always changes. That you know, right now we're kind of going through, like, you could say, like, a Critical Role phase, but, you know, when I started, things were a certain way, and then in the 90s they became a certain way, and then 3E came out, and then that kind of kicked off a whole new style of play. And I would say that, just going by memory, the Critical Role approach feels kind of similar to maybe some of the stuff that was going on in the 90s approach. And I feel like there was
Vampire the Masquerade vibe to it. I found, like, it's much more theatery.
Well, just in the sense of where story was very important and things like that. And then when 3E came out, there was a little more emphasis. I mean, it really varied from group to group, I think, but I do remember there being a lot more emphasis on encounters, a bit of a return to the dungeon, because the dungeon was kind of neglected by people in the 90s a bit, or maybe I mean, there were dungeons and people did dungeon crawls, but the game was kind of focusing more on setting and on story-driven modules and things like that. Though they would have dungeons, but it just felt like the dungeon wasn't front and center, and it wasn't something that was people were expecting in a lot of the campaigns I was in. And then when 3E came out, it kind of made the dungeon okay again. Do you know what I mean? But but I guess all I'm saying is there are these mainstream styles of play that are always going to be present, and the style that we play in is a style that we came to because we were just unsatisfied with what was happening in the mainstream at the time that we were playing. So like that's kind of always going to create a gulf. I think there's always going to be I don't know, like different fringe wings of the hobby that do different things. Do you know what I mean? And do them in different ways. Like there's like a story game wing of the hobby, and they also don't really mesh with the critical role approach.
Yeah,
And there's
because I see them as similar, but like they're not really. Like if you actually get into like I started following Paul Sega on Twitter, and he's the guy that did My Epic Master and Played It Woke and a bunch of other stuff. Like he's into the story game wing and stuff. I actually really respect the guy. He's a really cool, interesting fellow. It's unusual, but he's a very interesting designer, and his games are really fun, by the way. Play That Woke, although you do need weird tokens and a wooden bowl to play it, still has a very unique charm to it that I highly recommend. But yeah, like he very strongly disagrees with the whole critical role thing and has a lot of points of contention with it. And it's weird to see that because like he has well realized counter arguments and disagreements with the way it manifests.
I mean, my thinking on this is I don't particularly gravitate towards the critical role approach, but that's how a lot of people are playing the game now, and they're not really going to have any desire to come to what we're doing or what he's doing unless they have a problem.
Satisfied with it, yeah. Like that's the thing, because I've played like that before. I've played in games like that, and the reason I don't play them and I avoid them is because they are unsatisfying to me. But if like that's what you want, you're getting it.
Yeah, so I mean, you're not gonna say, "Hey, I have this problem that sandbox game will solve." Do you know what I mean? And it's funny because I have met a lot of people that are sort of in the critical role mindset, and they're just not interested. I mean, everybody's different. I'm sure some people just don't know about sandbox play, and when they hear about it, maybe they'll be interested. But most of the people I've met that I've talked to, they find it just too difficult to run, or just not intuitive enough to what they want, or
it's a big departure.
Yeah,
I was flabbergasted when I encountered sandbox play. I really had no idea what the hell was going on.
The structure really doesn't seem to gel with a lot of them. So my feeling is you kind of have. I prefer to do the soft sell on this sort of thing. I prefer not to really push it hard on people and be like, this is the way.
I actually run it like a board game. Like whatever I do, because I encounter a lot of critical role folks, and I'm like, hey, do you want to try my preferred systems? I like Adventure Conqueror King is like my default that I go to, and it's basically Beckney. It's basic. It's basically basic. So I'm just like, hey, look, try this. Roll 3d6 in order, choose a name and a class, and then let's just go. Let's just give it a try. It'll take you 10 minutes to make a character. I'm going to put you in a dungeon, and I just want you to try to do what a person could do, and don't think about your class abilities so much. And I have tons of success with that, because when you play that way, you have a different mindset.
Yep.
You're not thinking about like, oh, well, what's my character's backstory? Where do they fit into the story the GM is trying to collaboratively craft with us? Like, all in on, and you're focused on the immediacy of, I'm in the middle of a dungeon filled with monsters, and my torch is running out. How do I solve that problem? It's a very different kind of mindset in. So that's my sell with it. It's just like, just try it. Just try it out. It's one of the reasons I give my games away for free right now, is because A, they're not done, and B, like, try it. Give it a whirl. I'm a pretty capable writer and game designer. Try my stuff. What's actually Venture Satanist, the Chalt guy, I started following me on Twitter and downloaded my game and gave me $5 for it, as far as I can tell. So thanks, Venture. That was an interesting compliment. It's weird. I keep interacting with relative bigwigs in our little corner of the hobby, and it's always like, I follow Janelle Jacques on Facebook. We're like Facebook friends. She's really cool. She's awesome. She's always doing stuff with minis.
One of the cool things about the hobby is that you can have those interactions with other designers. Do you know what I mean? Because it's such a I don't know. It's a small industry, so it's like, there's not
Yeah.
they're not being drowned. They're not being drowned in emails and stuff. I think so they can field, you know, comments and things like that, and you get responses. I've had some good interactions with like James Lauder. He's more of a novel writer than a game designer, but he wrote Night of the Black Rose and stuff like that. And, you can kind of pick people's brain who you respect in the industry, so
That's always wonderful. Like this podcast that we do, I think we started just because we exchanged a few messages on a forum.
Yeah.
It was like, "Do you want to join my podcast?" And I was like, "Okay." And
yeah,
now
I
we're
forget.
back.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. I remember that.
It's just sea
I,
moons of time. So,
but yeah. So okay. So we have those elements. What about using this as a villainous organization in a campaign? Would you have any hesitancy to do that? Because it is for in modern terms, it would be like a sex trafficking
it is.
organization.
This is sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Like if you just use modern nomenclature,
Yeah.
it's the same process. So okay, so I'm of two minds about it. Number one, if it's a backstory element, then okay. Or if it's we need to stop this, and I just kind of describe what's going on without getting into like gory detail. Oh, you know of this ring where they're basically forcing women into prostitution and like torturing them and all this stuff. And like, oh, let's break that up. Okay, great. That gets an easy pass. It gets harder when it's like, okay, you're captured by them as a female character, because I don't want to put you through the scenes that this movie was clever enough to cut in a way that it was digestible to an audience.
I get you. The difference between are you putting an end to this organization from the outside, or are you
in the torture chair?
Yeah.
I've worked in torture scenes and like dark games before, and the critical thing about them isn't that they're hard; it's that they're boring because you don't have any agency. If you don't have any agency as a player, what the hell are you doing in the game?
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to put them in a jail cell and say you can't get out, and like that's kind of what you'd have to do, and that would be dull at best. And like I don't want to do that. And then even worse than that, I don't want evil characters like role played by my friends to start something like this.
Yeah.
Because like I'm uncomfortable with like even in a totally fictitious setting, then being like, yeah, let's make a prostitution ring. That'll be great. We'll steal women from poor families and force them to prostitution. Like that would be the point where like I'd be like scoot away from the game table. Like, guys, is this something you want to happen in this game? Holy hell, this is past my limit.
I mean, I think this is one of those things where you kind of have to know the group, and like my comfort level would be running this as a villainous organization, where the stuff would be present in the setting. The players would potentially be rescuing people that have been kidnapped by it, and that's obviously stuff that not everybody is going to be happy with as content for a game, but I think that's fairly playable. I think that's
there's a level of vetting with your group with that. I mean, you play with the same people long enough, you know.
I think the other avenue that you're talking about, I probably wouldn't want to run it that would kind of not be my cup of tea. Do you know what I mean? Like that, because I could just see so many areas where it would go wrong. Do you know what I mean? But for the right group, it might work. I don't know. I just wouldn't particularly want to run that.
Abstract it enough where it's like, because like, say you ran it in Axe, like this was like how you decided to do, like you were a thief, and this is how your thieves guild worked. The abstraction in Axe is that during downtime you'll get some GP that represents all the economic activity, and that's it. Okay, like look, whatever fluff you want to put on that, if you don't go into too gory details or expect us to act it out. Okay, you got some XP from illegal criminal activity. In this case, it was prostitution and forced prostitution, so like slavery and prostitution. That's dark, granted, but it's so abstract. I mean, like at the end of the day, you add some more gold to your character sheet. There's not a lot that changes. Okay, fine. But like, again, you're almost opening the door for people to go like, okay, I want to be involved and role play, like mentally breaking some of these newly minted sex slaves.
Well, I think,
and at that point,
no, and I think because again, I used to run Crime Network a lot, and that's like a mafia game that we did, and that one, you did have sex trafficking. It wasn't called sex trafficking. I think it was called human trafficking in the
Yeah, they kind of softened it a
I
little.
forget what we called it, but either way, there was a it was trafficking women. That's what it was called.
Ooh, that is an edge.
We made it in 2009, so
I think that is a
at the
reasonable edge.
time, nobody batted an eye at that. Now I don't I'm sure people would pause, but the point is, the idea was you were playing characters like out of The Sopranos or Goodfellas. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But it wasn't. It wasn't. You know. It wasn't something where we were expecting that people would focus on what you're talking about. Do you know what I mean? That's the. I figured that that would be stuff that wasn't really dealt with directly,
Well,
but the
I mean,
other aspects of it would be.
I
Do you know
don't
what I
know
mean?
how realistic it is. Like again, because you know and vet the people you game with. You
Yeah.
and I both do this. So like I don't think any of my friends would want to do that. So what I'm really approaching there is a problem where the less you know and vet the people that you play, the more you expose yourself to
Yeah.
that. But really, you don't need the excuse of this particular criminal activity to have a creepy person enter your game and do creepy stuff.
No,
Like
no,
so,
and that's I was thinking something similar as you were talking. There's a certain type of play. I think we're both worried about a certain type of player that might be present when these things are in play, and that type of player is the sort of player who would sort of take glee in either inflicting this on NPCs or on other players when it's obviously making other players uncomfortable or something. Do you know what I
the
mean?
nasty serial killer players, and
Yeah.
like it's weird, but like yeah, you encounter them in the hobby.
Yeah. Uh,
The thing is, and I think this is the important thing, if you know how to vet, and it's a skill you need to get as a game master, you won't be dealing with those people because they self-identify. The second they want you to describe the torture scene, you know it's time for them to leave now.
yeah. Or you
It-
can
it-
put the brakes on it. If you have a player like that, you can just say, I'm not.
I'm not
You know,
doing that.
I don't want to do that. Um,
In a
you
lot
know,
of cases, they'll leave.
yeah.
Like, because it's that kind of player, in my experience, and I've had enough experience, unfortunately, with this in the Midwest that like you can kind of smell them. Like, they're not just looking for the game; they're looking for the game master they can leverage to make that game happen. Like, they're smelling the weakness in the people at the table. Like, they're victimizing people basically, and you got to vet for that. Don't let yourself be a victim.
Well, I mean, yeah, and again, it's a social situation. So I mean, I think you know, I don't know. I'm of the mind that like this is all pretend. I wouldn't use the word victim in this situation for myself. Like I just think that's somebody who I don't want at the table. Do you know what I mean? And so
Right.
you
Well,
know,
here's the thing. You aren't the kind of person that gets victimized, though. Neither am I. But there are people that do. People
okay,
that just don't have that kind of that stoniness right at the core where they're like, hey, you know what? No, buddy, get the hell out. They don't have that. And that person is the prey of this particular kind
no,
of
no,
player.
no. I get that. I guess what I'm saying though is that this is ultimately pretend. Do you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah. Well,
it's not like the
that's the
person's
thing.
like to me victimized would be the person came in and punched me in the face, or they came to your house and they
Well, that's kind of
trashed your.
interesting. I think we actually have a difference of opinion there. Because I agree with you. I mean, I do agree with you in that. But I also like if you're in a social situation and you don't have the tools, like the social tools, like you and I have, to just get out of it. Like you don't find the ability to stand up and leave when you're so uncomfortable you don't want to be in it anymore, and so you're kind of forced to be there. That's victimization in my estimation. Like, because
Well,
you just don't like that's
I
taking someone who is incapable of asserting themselves in that kind of situation and forcing them to be in an
but
uncomfortable situation.
well, but they're kind of doing it to themselves. Like it's. I mean, they're it's social discomfort. Do you know what I mean? It's
It
not.
is.
It's not. It's
It's
not.
not, it's not a physical barrier to
Yeah,
exit.
it's not. I mean, again, I mean, there are certain situations. I mean, it depends on the specifics because obviously certain things could be going on at the game that are taking it to the level of victimization. I just would think that if it's just discomfort, then to me that's I mean that's not a positive thing, and it might make them upset. But I think that it's I think if you at a certain point you kind of do it to yourself. Do you know what I mean? If you're,
Oh yeah, well
do you know what I'm
that's
saying?
the
Like,
insidious thing about it is that like you can always give and the thing is it is easy to give the advice of like look you're in one of two uncomfortable situations, right? You're either uncomfortable because you're leaving awkwardly and you don't know how to do that with grace or with assertiveness, or you're uncomfortable because you're sitting there like squirming having to deal with this guy describe something hideous happening and you don't want to deal with that. And in either case, like there's not really like you can always say like well why didn't you just stand up? And it's like, well, the fact is, if you get to a certain level of social malfunction, you really are forced to stay there. And like, I am
oh
talking
no, no,
like,
I get that, but I guess what I'm saying is it's, to me it's still like when I don't know, it's, we're talking about language, but like
yeah, there's some
we're talking about a situation where
talking about this.
nobody's really aware that that's going on in that person's head, right? Like that's the thing. As
Because
far as
that's an element of this is that
yeah,
no one's aware of what's going on.
yeah,
I think this though, this thing what I'm talking about here, I think this is where people are trying to introduce like the X card stuff. Which, by the way, that seems to have blown over. Like that was a huge deal for like all of a week. Now everyone's like, yeah, whatever, X card, big deal.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean,
I
I,
think that's where that thinking comes from. Where like if you just don't have the tools,
I
at least you can put a card on the table.
I mean, I can sympathize with people being upset and uncomfortable. I guess where I kind of come, maybe I'm older and I just have a different
You
viewpoint,
are old.
but like my view is I don't think people should do things. I think people should avoid ideas and habits that make them weaker, like over time. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that it's easy to get up and get away in all those
Well,
cases or whatever,
I
but
feel
I
like
think but I think
like
what we're
it's absurd.
I feel like we're kind of reinforcing behavior that's going to make people weaker over time and make them feel more uncomfortable over time. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I'd rather
I think that's
encourage
the
people
argument
to.
against the X card that wins in my mind is okay, sure, you got out of that one awkward social situation with your X card. What if they didn't give a shit about the X card? What if they didn't care?
Well, that's I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I
Are
think
you going to use it every like? What are you going to use? I start a job interview. What if you're giving customer service to someone and they start yelling at you? You're going to throw up a card and be like, "Look, respect my X card."
so.
No, you need to develop the tool that allows you to assert yourself.
So
You know?
well, and I guess all I was trying to say was that I think that sometimes some of this stuff just sort of leads you down a road where you start to think you can't do anything. Do you know what I mean? And I think that it's better to get people to realize, even if it takes time, that they can do so. You know what I mean? I'm always more in favor of making somebody stronger rather than weaker. Um,
I mean,
and so,
this is part of your personality that I find very, very. It's good in a way that's not just redemptive. It's the only thing to redeem, really, but it almost like it redeems the very spirit of humanity, knowing that you have that kind of attitude. I like that. I like that sort of that kind of outlook you have. I find it admirable. There's the word I'm looking for. It's an admirable
okay,
attitude.
yeah, I'm not a redeemer, so I think admirable is probably better than.
No,
Uh,
no, redemption is what was in my head. I think that it's because of the subject matter of this movie. There's not redemption in it exactly, but I think the movie would agree with you. So when you think about it, like this isn't really a movie about emotional comfort.
no, no, and I
Also,
think, and
it's
that's
not
kind of
redemptive.
it's kind of the point of the movie is the discomfort's actually good in a way. It's kind of important. It makes the movie work. It's not for everybody, but I think having that kind of entertainment can be useful. Because this is an extremely cathartic movie by the time it gets to the end, and a very and mood too. The mood of the movie by the end is amazing. There's just a but you don't get there without that discomfort along the way.
You need the entire fabric of this movie. It really works together. It's a beautifully crafted machine. It is. And I've never seen a movie that does exactly what it does. Like I said, I've compared it to other movies like I Spit on Your Grave, but it's classier than I Spit on Your Grave, and it has a stronger emotional resonance. I compare it to Kill Bill, but it's less campy than Kill Bill. It's got a poetry to it, a beauty.
He takes it very seriously. Again, I think it's encapsulated in that opening scene. That really tells you everything you need to know about what this director is trying to do and what he's trying to capture. And it's a very striking. It's just something about the cinematography and the way that scene is shot is it's just a gorgeous scene, and I think that you know the film is, I don't know, it's I just find it a very moving and compelling watch. I think that it's just one of those, like there's a few films out there. This one, The Bride with White Hair, Swordsman 2 would probably be another. Come Drink with Me. They're just some movies that just kind of have this impact on me when I see them. It was just like, wow, this is different. I mean, this feels like a different kind of film.
Yes, very much. 100% agreement with me. And here's the thing about this movie that you can take into your gaming world, is that this movie gives you a really good way of introducing that heavier subject matter into a game by showing you, not telling you, how to cut away and win, but how to preserve the emotional impact and give the situations their proper gravity. That's a very useful thing to put into games.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So we're at the 40-minute mark, and it's after midnight, so we're gonna have to end it here.
I'm about to turn back into a pumpkin, so I can tell. I'm already getting all viney. You have to run away from the ball, or else, of course, the prince will know that you are indeed Cinderella. So after midnight, that's what happens.
I just have to get up at 5 to take my pills. So
depending on how much we actually got recorded, hint.
Well, we got 40 minutes, so we only missed that first bit if we got lost any.
Okay, that's good.
So,
but no, I think we nailed this one. This was one of our better ones. Yeah, we're back, baby.
Well, we got into some controversial territory, and I don't know how well we navigated it, but we'll see when we post it up.
We nailed this one. We did. We should court.
I don't think either you or I are very well equipped to determine whether we nailed something or not.
We nailed it. And we listened to it.
I think we. I never know how this stuff is going to land when we put it out. So,
was I actually drunk and high when I did this? Yeah. I leave it to you to decide, gentle viewer.
We've never. Well, I don't know about you, but I've never been drunk or high when I've done podcasts.
I'm just slowly moving a bong towards my lips. Yeah, me neither.
But I mean, I'm not opposed to it if people require that to so they can ruminate.
Oh, yeah, but I'm totally sober.
Yeah,
I'm just like snorting rails.
I can't eat my pills. I can't even drink with my medication, so it would be physically impossible for me to be drunk while podcasting.
Yep, just sober as a judge. I think I went from heroin to Jack Daniels, and it still seems like an upgrade.
What was that?
I like how my joking went from heroin to Jack Daniels, and Jack Daniels does seem like a progression. That stuff is hard, man.
Anyway. I had a very terrible experience with whiskey when I was young, and I cannot.
But terrible experiences with whiskey. It's whiskey.
Well, I just know, but just like when it comes to hard alcohol, the smell of whiskey, that sour smell that whiskey has, I'll want to throw up the moment I smell it. Yeah, vodka, I was always fine.
Gasoline.
Gin was actually my drink of choice when I was able to drink. But you don't like gin?
It's not for me. It's like vodka, and then I don't want to drink it. I like Jack Daniels. Even though it's wretched, there's something about it that seems honestly wretched. It might just be something Tennessee.
My dad's really into bourbon, so he's always drinking stuff like that. But I just it's got too much flavor for me. Too much flavor.
There's a lot going on with bourbon. Yeah. Like Jack Daniels is just basically like drinking pain and fire and a little bit of oaky aftertaste. It's Jack Daniels.
And it's just that sourness. I don't know. It just hits me in a space. I just can't.
With the movie Top Secret, where Chocolate Mousse gives the guy a drink, and he's like, "What is this?" He's like, "Gasoline."
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about that movie the other day. Actually, I was thinking about it.
An underrated gem. In the DVD commentary of that, the creators say that at the time of that DVD, it had still yet to turn a profit. I was like, that's my favorite aspect of this movie.
That's pretty remarkable, actually, especially given how many people know that film and have seen it and quote it, and
Well, here's a problem, and here's why it wasn't it didn't turn a profit, whereas Monty Python and the Holy Grail did. Monty Python and the Holy Grail didn't have any star power at all. It was just like when Graham Chapman is your lead, you don't really have star power. You get Val Kilmer in, well, all of a sudden you got to actually.
But wasn't that Val Kilmer's first or second movie?
It was, but he had a good agent, so.
But either way, it was still kind of a bigger budget movie either, and also it had what's his name? It wasn't Omar Sharif in Top Secret.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was actually a decent amount of star power in that movie. That's not the draw for me. I mean, I love that Kilmer's in it. He actually does a great job. He's like a little nascent proto Batman. But oh my god, it's damn it! Now I gotta watch Top Secret.
It's funny. I always associate Val Kilmer. The two roles I associate him with are Jim Morrison and Mad Mardigan from Willow.
Oh yeah, he was Mad Mardigan, wasn't he?
Yep.
God, how long ago did I watch Willow?
It came out in like '88, I think.
Probably my third favorite George Lucas movie ever made. I'd say about third, maybe fourth.
Yeah, I saw that in the theater when it came out, and so that those are the movies that I kind of and what was the other one he was in? Was it Real Genius? Was that the movie he was in?
I don't remember that one.
And he was Top Gun. He was in Top Gun too.
I remember Top Gun. Who was in Eyes Wide Shut? Was that Tom Cruise?
That was a Tom Cruise movie.
Okay, I always get those two confused. At a certain point in their career, they're identical in my brain. I don't know why.
They really look different.
I know.
It's because of Top Gun. I'll bet it's because of Top Gun.
Oh, it is Top Gun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they cross-pollinated there in my brain. Okay. Because, I mean, they were cross-pollinating in that movie, if you know what I mean.
It's been a long time since I've seen Top Gun.
That's the movie that made me realize I was like, I'm not all the way straight, am I? I'm not, sir. Neither of these dudes. It's a good movie, though.
Well, I mean, the 80s, there was a lot of films that, focused on the male physique.
Men, a lot of things about other young men.
What was that?
I don't dare repeat that. Okay.
I've probably mentioned this before, but I'm like pretty much deaf in my left ear, so I'm always asking him to repeat things in these podcasts.
So much fun.
So I'll have to listen to the podcast to find out what you just said. So anyways, we really should end it here because I gotta get to bed. So
folks, good night, everyone.
All right, so we'll be back. Hopefully, we will have an episode of Wuxia Weekend up soon too. I know I've been really lazy about doing these podcasts, so
you should see what this guy's been cranking out though. He's got some really great products in the works. Just wait for it.
So we will be back on, and until then, we will talk to you later.